Welcome to the Rusted Garden Homestead. Today's video is all about blossom end rot on tomatoes. I'll show you how to identify it, how to treat it. There's a lot of confusion on whether or not it's a calcium issue or a watering issue. And it's a little bit of both, but it's really about watering. And I'll explain that to you. And I'll also show you how to use eggshells most effectively in the garden with your tomato plants with respect to blossom end rot. First thing, the blossom end of a tomato is right there. That's where you see the blossom. Blossom end rot usually shows up on tomatoes when they're red, more often on Roma type tomatoes, more often on tomatoes in containers. Blossom end rot would look something like this. Your tomato's sitting there, and on the underside it's going to be black brown with a yellow ring around it, and right there is the blossom. The blossom hangs right there. It will drop off, and you're always going to see a dark impression right under there. That's due to blossom end rot. And what's happening is the tomato plant itself is not able to access the nutrients it needs, specifically calcium, and the plant will take the nutrients from the tomato and send it up to the rest of the tomato plant to help it survive and grow. And in doing so, you have issues with lack of nutrients and lack of water. Why is watering important? You could have plenty of nutrients down there, plenty of calcium, most gardens do. If you let the soil dry out significantly, because there's no water to make the nutrients kind of mobile and be able to get into the root system, the plant suffers. It can't access the calcium that's already present. Even more so in containers, because containers often have less nutrients, often not as much calcium, but they dry out really quickly. And if they dry out solid one time, the roots are damaged and your tomato plants suffer. So eggshells are a great source of calcium, but this form right here as an eggshell can't be accessed by the tomato. It's not in a water soluble form. So if you do this and think that it's going to help your plants, it will in like 3 to 5 years. That shell has to break down and the calcium has to be turned into a form of calcium that the plant can pull into the root system. Right now it's in the form of calcium carbonate. It's not going to do much. Soil biology over time will break this down, but these are really big pieces and they take a long time to break down. Let's go into the kitchen. I'll talk to you more about eggshells and how to use them in your garden. Again, I want to stress that blossom end rot is usually caused by inconsistent watering, and it's an issue with the roots being able to pull in the calcium. So adding calcium can make a difference, but it has to be in a water-soluble form. And when you have eggshells, it's calcium carbonate, and it's just not going to do anything for your plants. So let's go down to basics real quick. Shell like this is going to take 3 to 5 years to break down and even give back to your garden. And it's perfectly fine to get eggshells, break them up, throw them in your compost pile, throw them around your plants, and down the line, you know that you're going to have calcium in the soil, additional calcium. Even broken down like this, crunched up with your hand, this is still going to take many years to break down. The smaller the particles, the more surface area you have, and the more quickly soil biology can break it down. This is in a coffee grinder, even at, let me put some in there, at this consistency, it's pretty fine. It's going to take a year or two for it to really start breaking down and giving back. And it's you know, almost pulverized to a powder. To get eggshell into a place that it's immediately available, you want it to be almost like this. I mean, it's almost a pure powder, and you just have to, you know, put the eggshells in a coffee grinder. I'll show you how to do that in a second. Now again, even as we go through the different pulverization or crushing or breaking down or making small particles of eggshell, it's still calcium carbonate. The trick is to use 5% white vinegar distilled. The vinegar is an acid. It will react with the calcium carbonate, dissolve it, breaking it down into elemental calcium, which is immediately available to your plant. And it's real easy to do. I want to show you this. So if you have an issue with your plants or you're planting tomatoes and you want to get calcium to them immediately, number one, you can use garden lime. That's effective. If you want to use eggshells for the other benefits and minerals in there, that's perfectly fine too. But I want you to be able to do it the right way. Again, blossom end rot looks like this. You're going to take about a teaspoon, and this is per plant or so, maybe 2 plants, a teaspoon of the pulverized powdered eggshell, and you can see the dust coming up. It's really, really fine. And then you're just going to take some vinegar, about this much. It's going to get mixed with water, so don't worry about it being too acidic. You wouldn't want to put this straight on. And then you're just mixing it through, and you can see that it is foaming. Let's get a close up here. And basically the vinegar is breaking down that calcium carbonate into a usable form of calcium. This lets you know that you have calcium that can be absorbed by your plant. That being said, this is less of an issue than the consistent watering, and we'll talk more about watering at the end. So right now, you just let this react for a couple of minutes, and I would fill this with water. I'd put in some water, just stir it up. And this is too strong. There's too much acidity in here. It would damage your plants. Just mix this into a gallon of water and water in the base of 1 plant, 2 plants, even 3 plants. It's really enough calcium to kind of check the box saying, all right, it could be that potentially I have no calcium in my soil, that's why I have blossom end rot. But this is more done to maintain and know that you have calcium in your soil over time. This is a quicker fix. By having more calcium that can be absorbed into the plant, it can stop blossom end rot from going to other tomatoes. You can't cure this, but you can actually cut this off and still eat the tomato. So, box checked. We have available calcium that the plant can pull in. Now we have to more worry about, is the plant able to pull the nutrients into the system? Before we get to that, real quick, I want to show you the pulverizing process, and it's just eggshells, obviously. This is a coffee grinder. I have this linked in the video, not the specific one. Any coffee grinder works perfectly fine. It just gives you some examples. I have an Amazon shop, and I've linked some coffee grinders next to the video. So, pulverize it. You want to just keep going until it's a really fine powder, and you're going to have to shake it and give it a good 30 seconds or a minute. When you're done, you can see how fine it is, and this is what you want. This is going to dissolve, break down into the calcium, and we'll just pour it out real quick and go back out to the garden. That's what you want. Nice and fine. 1 teaspoon with some vinegar. Then take that, mix it into a gallon of water, and then you can pour it onto your plants. You can even pour it onto the leaves, but really we're going to concentrate more on the root system. If you're interested in building a curing or drying station, check out the video below this one on my YouTube channel, and please subscribe. I will also link that in the video description for the blossom end rot. So I have some fungal issues coming in on my tomato plants. If you want to follow me, I'll show you how I take care of that. But getting back to the blossom end rot, these plants are being watered pretty consistently. By hose, by rain, there is no issue. These plants are not going to get blossom end rot. How often do you water? That's a question I get all the time. And you're really ensuring that you do a deep watering where the water's getting down 12 inches, 2 feet deep, at least once a week. You want to get down to those deep roots. But tomatoes send out, and most plants send out, tons of surface roots that are in that top 2, 4, 6 inches. And they send the roots everywhere. You have to keep that soil moist. Use mulch, probably water 3 times a day, 3 times a week or more on hot days when it's into the 90s. And container plants, you may have to water twice a day. When your tomato plants get to this size in a 10-gallon container, or even, to this size in a 20-gallon container, they can suck the water out of that container in several hours, especially when the days are in the 90s or 100s. So you have to keep up on the watering. That's all I can really say about frequency. If the soil dries through, the plant can't get the calcium, blossom end rot happens. The plants take all the nutrients from the tomato, from lower leaves, sends it up top, they try and survive. So, coming back to what we're working on, we want to check the box, just make sure, especially in containers, that we have lime present. You can use, that we have calcium present. You can use basic garden lime, mix it into your containers, throw in a handful, sprinkle it across the ground in your garden beds, at planting time. But maybe you're really worried. So we do this to use the eggshells, because everybody likes using eggshells. And now that's the water-soluble form of calcium. Just some quick science. The more that you crush this up and pulverize it, the more surface area is created. So you go from something like that to pulverizing it, and you really increase the surface area by millions of times. Because each time you break it and crush it, it exposes an edge. That means this will break down much more quickly because there's more surface area for bacteria to get to it. So we're going to take this 1 teaspoon, some vinegar, we let it react, add in some water so that we can pour it into the container. You don't have to be exact. You could use 2 or 3 teaspoons if you want. Don't overdo the vinegar. What I showed you is all you really need. That starts the reaction. A lot of free calcium will be formed, and then over time, whatever isn't broken down will be broken down by soil biology. So that's a gallon of water in here. This is a 2-gallon container, and you want to make sure you get all of it in there. And the best way to do that is after you pour some in, fill this back up with water, give it a swirl, and you get the idea. And I would do that again, make sure it all gets in there. So we have a gallon of water. We are mentally making sure there's enough calcium in the soil, and we are watering this whole space. We're getting it to the surface roots. You don't want to just do this. You want to just cover the whole area. So this is a gallon. Again, 1 teaspoon is fine. You could use 2 or 3. You could use more if you're in containers and you're worried about it. But 1 gallon is kind of treating this whole space. And I would just keep going until everything is soaked in. When you mix it with water, and you always want to test spray or test pour, you could pour this onto your plant. Some of the calcium can be absorbed through the leaves. That speeds it up a little bit. But if you're not sure with how acidic you're making your mix, don't do that. It can damage the leaves. But this will get it right to the root system. Now you have calcium in there, and going back to what I was originally talking about, that if you don't water regularly, the nutrients don't get pulled into the plant. So really up your game with consistent watering if you have blossom end rot. Realize that Roma tomatoes tend to get it more often, even when things are perfect, so you may want to switch varieties. This is a paste tomato that is much better than a Roma type. I believe that is the Gladiator hybrid. Blossom end rot's going to show up more in containers. Containers may have to be watered 2, even 3 times a day based on the size of the plant, how hot it is, and the container size. But the bottom line is consistent watering allows your root systems to pull in all the nutrients that your tomatoes need and enjoy to grow and really produce beautifully for you. Thanks so much for watching. Please check out my seed shop at therustedgarden.com, and please subscribe. I'll show you how I take care of these tomatoes through 2023. Thanks for watching.